Satnam, beautiful Saruman Satnam. I hope that you are so ready for a very powerful month of March, because March is really all about rebirthing. This is a time when literally the very fabric of our entire being, of our lineage, is very ripe for profound transformation and for healing. And in today's Sovereign Women Movement podcast episode, we're going to be diving into this particular season. We're going to be looking at why the spring equinox and the start of eclipse season is a pivotal time, a crossroads for humanity, not just a phase of some kind of change, but literally a deeply spiritual journey towards especially ancestral and generational healing. These cosmic events that are happening in April, they're not just some calendar mark, they're not just any other day. They are literally our allies in shedding layers of past traumas and being able to welcome a renewed rebirth itself. And I'm not just talking New Age jambalaya. What's even more important and even more fascinating, which is why I'm taking the time to really focus this month on these transits and generational healing, is that what we're doing for the month of March is we're laying this foundational energy that is going to lead us into the most important astrological transit for all of 2024. And that is next month's Jupiter and Uranus conjunction, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in today's podcast episode. But in essence, this conjunction happening at the end of the eclipse season next month promises this monumental shift in consciousness for humanity, meaning the way you and I relate to the world will no longer be even close to the same. We are all at a major crossroads where the possibility of rebirth aligns with our own personal mission to heal not just ourselves, but the generational chains that have ever held us back. And so today we're going to be looking specifically at why it's very important for you to be more conscious than ever in the month of March. And for us to understand that, I want to share first with you a quote given to us by Tesla, who I think everyone knows who Tesla is, the famous inventor of the electricity in the 1800s. He was the one that invented it, although he wasn't given the credit for it. And he was an incredibly spiritual man, quantum physicist. He was a futurist. He basically knew what was coming, and he created free energy for everyone, except that, of course, the higher or the darker powers decided they were going to charge us for it. A very intelligent, wise man. And one of my favorite quotes of him is when he says that the knowledge of how the mental and vital energy transform into what we want, meaning the process of manifestation and creation using energy to create then your reality, and to also, he says, achieve control over our feelings. That's our birthright. He says in the East, they call it Kundalini Yoga. And this knowledge of energy can either be learned through Kundalini Yoga, but for some people, it's something that they're born with, that they actually acquire in birth. That was Tesla. And any really human being who has been of the future, they basically came to this world and fulfilled their life purpose. They learned how to work with energy. Energy is your emotions. Emotions are energy in motion. And he, being emotionally intelligent, is someone like him who was able to manipulate this energy to create even things that have never been created before. And if we truly understand this profound quote of energy, what we realize is that there is a transformative power within us that many of us may not have been born with it, like Tesla, but that we have practices like Kundalini Yoga to help us go beyond even the creation of our life, because the reason why you are creating a life that you do not like is because you have not learned to master your emotions, which are energy in motion. And the reason that I'm bringing this up right now is because everything in this world is energy. The vibration of the chair you're sitting on, the vibration of a person that you're looking at, because it's really all their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. It's all energy. which means we can change that energy. We can alchemize it. We can bring it, just like the alchemists, from lead into gold, from low frequency emotions of repeated thought patterns of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I was abused, I'm a victim, to shifts of perception, to gratitude, wisdom, through understanding the world energetically, meaning we don't have to be victims to our past. And because everything is energy, when we have very important dates, like what's going to happen this month, like the Spring Equinox, the lunar eclipse, which I'll talk about today, and which leads us to next month's really powerful energy of Jupiter in Uranus, which I'll share with you more information about that today. What that is basically energy. There's a different amount of energy. There's a different caliber of energy that is being infiltrated into Mother Earth, which then affects you and I. Just the way the full moon affects the water and the waves in the ocean, it affects us too, because we're made of mostly water as well. So this is why even police officers, they know that on full moons they have to be even more careful and more conscious, because people lose it. Why? Because it's emotions, and emotions come to the surface during full moons, and eclipses are even more powerful than that. So then people can get real crazy, or you could be powerful and wise like our ancestors and actually learn to harness. Harness means use this energy by practicing specific meditations to unload the subconscious, to create a beautiful world and life from even things that have never been created, just the way our brother Tesla did. Because what he says that he created ultimately, which is spiritual sovereign self, he created the ability to listen to his thoughts and ideas and then manifest them into the world, even though no one else knew or even understood him. I mean, think about in the 1800s, him giving free electricity and energy to everyone. That's something that came to him as a very spiritual man, because he learned how to harness energy, use the energy of the cycles of Mother Earth, and in essence, use all the vibration of this energy to then create something tangible. So that's why this is very, very important. So what I want to do is I want to share with you all first the step-by-step, introducing you a little bit into the major things that are happening in March that are going to lead to April, which is going to be life-changing. The way you and I experience the world, the way you and I see the world is going to completely change a lot. And we need to be prepared for this. I was preparing everyone for the 2020 major changes. I intuitively was guided to leave my real estate broker position of almost 15 years, where I was at the top of my game, right before the major transit that occurred in 2020, because I knew what was coming astrologically, intuitively. I knew that this was going to be a pivotal point where humanity was never going to be the same again. And with this transit that's happening in April, that's exactly what's happening. And if you fall asleep in March and you're not integrating these things that I'm going to share with you today, you're going to really miss out on an opportunity to heal, to transform, to expand. And you're also going to get caught up with the sheep. I'm talking about the fear mongering, because a lot of things are going to collapse. We are literally all witnessing the collapse of the cabal, the collapse of what used to be the control over the human race. So these are very powerful, interesting times where we're going to need some popcorn, but by the same token, we're going to need knowledge to learn how to navigate them. So as we move into the month of March, the theme is all about rebirthing. Instead of our community, the Satori vitality and spirituality, where it is where women begin their journey with me to disrupt ancestral generational karmic patterns of trauma and pain. Typically, if you've never done any type of healing work, any type of dark shadow work, or even integrated any type of Kundalini yoga therapy or spiritual psychotherapy, I always advise my clients to start at Satori Vitality and Spirituality. And it's also because the Sovereign Women Academy, which is where that's my group coaching program, where we actually disrupt these patterns, that one's not open for enrollment all year. So typically what happens is if a woman wants to start the process, they'll start with me at Satori, because we work specifically there to increase the vitality, the energy levels with these techniques so that you could be even more prepared and ready to do the deeper healing work of generational healing. We don't want to cause a psychic shock into the system because of so much that is changing and because we don't have enough energy within us, because our emotions are basically eating up how we feel and how we act in the world. But in essence, the month, what I've been sharing inside of Satori Vitality is we're working specifically with rebirthing with these energies, and we're working specifically with meditations and kriyas that are going to help us activate what is known as our soul body, so we can really listen intuitively to where it is we need to go. Because what happens with eclipse season as it is, which starts in March, is that it can bring very chaotic, confusing energy. It realigns us with our destiny very quickly. And the thing about this month is that not only do we start eclipse season, but we also then begin what is known as the spring equinox. And the spring equinox is a major pivotal point of rebirth. The spring equinox, our ancestors absolutely built ritual, and they actually built beautiful temples, not just because they were beautiful, but there was sacred geometry that basically harnessed this energy during these days. So, for example, in Chichen Itza, which sits in the outskirts of Yucatan. If you've ever been to Cancun, you can definitely take a trip to Chichen Itza and check out this incredible. It's a paradise. That's really what it is. Where our ancestors, the Mayans, built this beautiful temple created for the god of the sun, Quetzalcoatl, which actually is this diagram where on the side, on the actual spring equinox day, you can see a serpent that is flowing down the side of the temple. And this was done intentionally and on purpose, because during the spring equinox, what is known is that we have an equal amount of day and light. And this is a very sacred position of the sun and the moon, or the sun and the earth, because neutrality and that middle point, what we call it in Kundalini yoga, is this basically Shushuman. This is a part of an aspect of ourselves of being in neutrality, because when you are in neutrality, you're aware of both the darkness and the light, not only within you, but in the world. And then you can harness that energy. That's why they built these temples where they are collecting that energy. But then what they would do is they would go inside these temples to meditate, to dance, for chanting on these specific days, so that they could then gain spiritual knowledge, so that they can unload the subconscious mind and heal, transform, so that they could travel interdimensionally. Because it's very much proven that really what they use these temples for were to meditate, so that they could change their frequency, their energy, so that they could then travel to different planets, different dimensions, because all of us are multidimensional beings. It's just the fact that, especially nowadays in the West and in modern society, where basically most people have become slaves. They're not sovereign to their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And they truly do not believe or know the immense power that they hold within them. Our ancestors were very wise about that. And they use these portals, because that's what it is, to grow, to evolve, and to create technologies that are way more advanced than the silly little iPhone that we're using, way more advanced than the silly little things that we think are so cool nowadays, which we're now discovering. So they use these days of like the spring equinox, especially for these rituals, for this meditation, to be able to do major healing and to be able to transform. And so this has always been a very, very sacred time for all of us to go within, to really become still, to the point of being able to become aware of what past consciousness programs we have to leave behind. One of the things that my teacher, Jogi Bhajan, who was the great tantric master who brought the Kundalini yoga teachings from the East to the West, he literally called the spring equinox as the most important day of your entire life. And the reason this is because the spring equinox becomes our ability to really get focused on what is happening in the subconscious mind. It really allows us to unload it to basically change our destiny and our patterns through the use of specific meditations, specific kriyas, in essence, through the use of energy work. And what is known also during the spring equinox is that it is a very important time for us to rebirth. And I'm not talking about just new age jambalaya. I'm talking about an actual therapeutic process that was created in the 70s, that then when Jogi Bhajan came to the West, he gave us these teachings around rebirthing, which is actually a manual now. I don't have it here with me, but it's 32 different specific meditations and kriyas that we use to literally rebirth. Because rebirthing is something that became popular in the 70s as a healing technique, but it's a way for us to basically heal deeply held patterns. I'm talking about generational patterns that are engraved in your nervous system, that are engraved in your brain, in your mind, body, and spirit. And what Jogi Bhajan realized when he came to the West was that Kundalini Yoga offered a specific way to help us release these patterns in a very sustainable way, in a way that is not traumatic. And because you have to imagine, if we're rebirthing, literally what it sounds like, there are things that you're going to have to become aware of that are then going to impact the way you act and are, and perhaps you've tucked in under the rug for a long time. I'm talking about past pain that's buried in the subconscious mind, these hidden memories, old emotional patterns that compromise your happiness and sabotage your success every day. These are patterns that of the traumatic experiences you've been through as a child, as an adult, but also the traumatic experiences that your ancestors have gone through, because remember, those become imprints in our nervous system, in our DNA. So what rebirthing is and why it's so important, especially during the month of March when we're moving in through the spring equinox and the lunar eclipse and this Jupiter conjunction in Uranus, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few moments, is we approach this technique as a way to heal and to enhance our personal growth. So this is not an intellectual experience. It really is a way for us to connect with these old beliefs and patterns in the body at an energetic level, because your body keeps score. So if someone died in your family and you're going through grief, or as a child someone died, if there was abuse as a child, if you are in a pattern of addiction or toxic relationships, these are all emotions that either you're numbing, denying, or letting run wild in your body, mind, and spirit, which are making you physically ill, because all physical illness starts as an emotion. So what we do through these rebirthing series of meditations and kriyas, which I'll talk a little bit more about some of the techniques that we can start to really integrate, is what we're changing the pattern. We're changing the pattern of the energy. Remember, we talked about that earlier. Everything in this world is energy. Your emotions are energy and motion. So by introducing a sound, a breathing technique, that's how we are rebirthing, because we are unloading the old, unloading the subconscious mind, and we're allowing our authentic Satnam, which is our true essence, to be born. So it may sound really unusual, but really what it is us moving from suppressing our own emotions, which suppress our happiness, which suppress our joy, and learning how to feel alive again, learning how to not identify with your emotions, learning what changes you need to make in order to sustain your authenticity. And so what Jogi Bhajan would do is he would teach a series of specific rebirthing classes, which have this profound transformational power. And it gives us a powerful tool to be able to heal generational patterns of pain, to be able to overcome the obstacles which keep you from living your best, so that your life can be awakened, so that you can be rejuvenated. And when we practice these specific meditations and kriyas during a time like the spring equinox, what we're using is the neutrality of the energy that's being infiltrated into Mother Earth to make these major changes, so that we can heal the pain from the past. We can overcome these obstacles which keep us from basically living our best life, from feeling rejuvenated, from being present to our purpose. The entire idea of rebirthing is basically to release the subconscious mind, the storehouse of your misery. And so when we invite and welcome the spring equinox, what's truly happening is that we're using now meditation and kriyas to then harness this energy so that we can use this important transition point, because that's what it is, in which the hours of the daylight and darkness are going to be equal. The sun and the moon energies are in perfect balance. That's very, very rare, because in many spiritual traditions all over the world, springtime is absolutely associated with the awakening nature of our own selves from the darkness, from the winter. So this is a major time of spiritual awakening. It's actually the beginning of the year. We shouldn't be setting intentions and resolutions in December, but that's winter time. If you set intentions, it's like planting seeds in the winter, nothing's going to grow. March, especially the equinox, is exactly the tipping point of when we need to start setting these intentions, when we need to start planting the seeds, because now we're moving into the light. We're coming out of hibernation. On the spring equinox, that's when we're sprouting. So whatever thoughts you're having that day, you're planting those seeds for the next cycle until the fall equinox. That's huge. So if you're unconscious of your thoughts that day, if you're not coming into the natural rhythms of nature because of all this emotional trauma you're moving through, which most people don't anyways, because they haven't tapped into the wisdom of their ancestors, then those thoughts you're having on that day, especially the spring equinox, the potency is 7 days before and 7 days after. But especially that day, those are the seeds you're planting that are creating your future, that are creating your tomorrow. Remember what Tesla said. Either you are born with the knowledge of how to use energy or you acquire it through Kundalini Yoga. He literally said that. He literally said through Kundalini Yoga. Either you learn to manage your energy, which is your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, or it's given to you through birth. And most of us, it was not given to us through birth. So we learn these techniques so that as the sun and Mother Earth and the moon are coming into this beautiful union, then we can disrupt, we can unload. We can unload the subconscious mind with all the garbage of the past. And I can assure you that most people don't integrate things like that. Right? It's like, how often do you think, oh, I need to unload my subconscious mind? Or how often do you think, oh my gosh, the spring equinox is coming. This is a time for me to cleanse and purify and rebirth. Most of us don't do that because we're not in tune with the natural rhythms of Mother Earth. And we're not in tune with the natural rhythms of Mother Earth because we're off, our hormonal balance is completely off because of the emotions. If you're someone who is always stressed out and doesn't have a way an outlet to deal with the stress, or if you've had a lot of childhood trauma, generational patterns of trauma, then you're running cortisol into your body the entire day unconsciously. Your brain is becoming fractured. The hippocampus, the amygdala starts to shrink. So if it's shrinking, it starts feeding your body cortisol and adrenaline. And that's what's making you sick. That's what's making the cancer. That's what's giving you the liver problems. It's the emotions. It has nothing to do with the actual experience. And so like Tesla, when we learn to integrate these practices of Kundalini Yoga, especially during these times, then what happens? Then you're disrupting the pattern of the thoughts and feelings and emotions that you're constantly having. So especially on the spring equinoxes, where we can really come into this neutrality of just not only our own selves, of awareness of our darkness and a light, but also of the world, of our experiences, our relationships, the people around us. And so after the spring equinox this month, what we're going to work with, and I'm going to do a special podcast episode on the week of the spring equinox to talk more about the energies and how this affects our body, specifically our mind and our spirit, because there's certain parts of our consciousness, like what is known as the Sushumna in yogic science, that we can access in the neutrality to make these major changes. But I'll leave it there for now, and I'll focus specifically on the spring equinox when we get closer to that in a couple of weeks. What I want us also to understand for this month is the lunar eclipse that's coming up on March 25th. And the reason I want you to really understand that is because, again, this is the foundation. This is the in-between that then is going to take us to April, which that's going to be the major life-changing transit that is going to completely change the way we relate to the world. So eclipses are very powerful, not as powerful as the equinoxes and the solstices, but very close, very, very close, because eclipses have this potent and energy that basically serve as catalysts for significant endings and new beginnings. That's why our ancestors also always tracked the eclipses, because they knew, again, just like the spring equinox, when the sun is being covered by Mother Earth, or the moon is being covered, or the moon is covering the sun because it's a lunar eclipse, because that's what happens, then the amount of energy and the caliber of energy that is being infiltrated onto Mother Earth is completely different than any other day. And that's why eclipse season, which begins this year on March 25th and ends on April 8th next month, there's always two sets of eclipses that come together. There's always one right around the equinox, and then that's the lunar eclipse. And then we close out eclipse season in April with the solar eclipse. But then there's another major thing happening in April, which I want to talk about in a few moments, which is going to even build momentum on the changes that you're going through. And it can also feel very overwhelming, because eclipses literally do what they sound like. They eclipse people, relationships, business, habits out of your life that no longer serve you, very, very dramatically sometimes, and sometimes without even warning. Although I think we all have warnings of what we need to let go of, especially if you're being mindful with your practice prior to the eclipse. Because if you're not, you're going to get to the eclipse and all of a sudden you're going to be like, why is this happening? It was already telling you. You were already being prepared, especially weeks prior, as to what it is you need to let go. And either you let it go or you're dragged and it's taken from you. That's just the way it works. And it's not God punishing you. It's you punishing yourself, because only the ego makes us learn hard lessons. God is not like, I think people like will see God as like, when parents like say, I'm going to spank you for what you did and it's going to hurt you more than it hurt me. Like, that's so ridiculous. That if you hurt your child or spank them, it's going to hurt them more than it's hurting you. And number two, for us to think that God works that way with us is really silly. So these are some of the things you're going to need to start to question as it relates to blaming God for the other shoe to drop, or maybe even start to question your relationship with God. Eclipses literally remove things that are not in alignment with your highest destiny. So think of it this way. If you've been putting out rockets of desire, let's say that you want to buy a house, or you want to open a new business, or you want a relationship, right? Well, you're putting out these rockets of desire. God is always saying yes, always. Maybe not in your timing, but God is always saying yes. But for that to manifest, you have to embody that. You have to change and actually level up to the frequency for that to happen, right? So then what does that mean? That means that all these things that are not in alignment with your desires have to fall off. And that's why people get all upset, because they're like, God is punishing me. All I wanted was to do this. All I wanted was to do that. Well, God is assisting you by removing those things that are in your way. So eclipses are not something that we are to fear. It's not something to be afraid of at all. But it does define and change our entire life. It can change eras. They point to major historical events that have happened. And yes, people harness that energy also to do dark things during the eclipses. And specifically this one, which is happening March 25th, it's going to be in Libra. So it's going to be about harmony and balance. It's going to be about our relationships. I'm going to go deeper into this once we get closer to the March 25th eclipse. I'm going to do a whole podcast episode on what specifically you need to be doing that week to use that energy to your advantage and not let it use you. But in essence, eclipses are what we call destiny, because these are moments of the collective awakening and more deeper self-realization, more deeper self-awareness. They are very significant for our own individual and spiritual awakening and for our own transformation. And they truly do define the moments of our own inner birthing, our own coming into wholeness. Because during the eclipses, we're better able to maintain this inner silence. Eclipses are not for manifestation. These moments can be moments of awareness that can bring you tremendous awakening because you cannot change what you're not aware of. So this eclipse, particularly in Libra, is going to help a ton to bring ourselves back into harmony, especially after the Spring Equinox, which, like I said, when we get closer to the 25th, I'll be doing a whole podcast episode just for the eclipse. Now, what I don't want to leave out is I want to talk about what is happening in April. And this is all I've been talking about in my community, Satori Vitality and Spirituality in the Solar Moon Academy, all probably for the last 4 weeks already. Because what we're doing is we're preparing for our success. If you're not preparing for your success, then what are you preparing for? And that's the whole thing about April. That in April, what's going to happen is this very rare transit, astrological transit, which only happens every 14 years. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that have happened before during this transit so you can see the monumental changes that we're getting ready to basically experience. What I'm talking about is Jupiter and Uranus coming into conjunction, meaning they're at the same degree of the same zodiac sign in the sky, which this year around is in Taurus. And this happens only every 14 years. The last time that this happened, it happened in 2011. And the next time it's going to happen is going to be 2037. This transit is all about Kundalini awakening. And as I share with you more on this transit next week, you're going to understand why. Major spiritual awakening, freedom movement. What that means is the power being restored back to the people, shattering our belief systems. That's what this is all about, because Uranus shatters. It's very, very breakthrough. All of a sudden, things completely changing. And Jupiter is about our belief systems. So what I see happening, because Jupiter and Uranus together, some of the things that have happened in the past, for example, in 1782 and 1783, we had the first hot air balloon. That's when Jupiter was conjunct Uranus, and it marked the era of exploration and innovation in aviation. This transit has a lot to do with aviation, with the skies, with the planets, with our intergalactic family members. There was in between 1844 and 1845, when it happened too, there was the invention of the telegraph system. So this was considered the first technology that really led to the internet. In 1899 through 1901, when Jupiter was conjunct Uranus, the Wright brothers developed gliders. They started to pave the way for powered flight and further exploration of the skies. In July 1969, when Jupiter was conjunct Uranus, the moon landing occurred, very significant for human consciousness. And in 2010, which was the last time that occurred, there was the first 24-hour flight in solar-powered plane, emphasizing the advancement in sustainable aviation technologies. Now, a lot of aviation, and I'm going to, again, dedicate an entire episode on this, but I also believe that what we're going to really learn about, there are going to be bigger breakthroughs in April, is about the fact that we've never been separate from our intergalactic star systems, brothers and sisters. We're going to learn more about our origins, meaning that our ancestors are from the star system Ceres, Pleiades, from Orion. This evidence is already obvious here in places like Egypt and the temples, but it's also very, very obvious with all of the things that we're learning in the fact that we are connecting with these intergalactic star systems, and also even in spiritual scripture. We know in the Bible that Enoch was visited from intergalactic star system members. I don't call them aliens. I call them intergalactic family members. And I've asked if I could say this, but I actually saw an intergalactic star system member. I truly believe he was from Pleiades, or she was, I don't know. My son and I saw intergalactic star system member together in the island of Maui, inside of a coming out of a mountain, and that the intergalactic star system member recognized us and made eye contact with us, and he wasn't, or she wasn't afraid. I don't know again what male or female, but we made visual contact. Since then my life has not been the same, right, because of the guidance and all the different things that have happened. But now we're seeing that this has always been the reality. And I truly do believe that in April, because Jupiter conjunct Uranus is about shocking revelations, breakthrough, it's going to change our belief systems. That something is going to be revealed about the cosmos, about the star systems, that is going to completely change the way you and I experience this world. In addition to the fact that, we're getting so close to already launching the first personal planes for humanity. I mean, stuff is going to change very quickly. And it is very important for us to learn to discern what the truth is versus what false information is, and become sovereign in our own way of experiencing the world. Because a lot of people have cognitive dissonance, and they don't have enough vitality, chi, in their system, because the emotions are eating up their energy, to catch up with how much the world has changed. That's causing a lot of pressure on the nervous system, on the brain, which is causing a lot of cold depression, a lot of anxiety. This is a collective trauma that the world is going through. And a lot of it has to do because people can't catch up to how different the world will continue to be and is right now. So I'm preparing you for that, because that's happening in April 20th. So what we need to use March for is to truly be able to rebirth, to integrate this type of holistic therapy, which I'm going to be talking about all month, to be able to engage our soul, to be able to bring inner joy, to be able to regain our zest for life, so that we don't feel so overwhelmed with all the changes that are happening. And people from all walks of life can use this practice of rebirthing to enhance their entire lifestyle, but more importantly, to disrupt generational karmic patterns of trauma, of pain, whatever your grandma and your mom couldn't heal from, the abuse they went through, childhood, depression, addiction, all these different things that are passed down to us in the DNA. Because what happens when you start to practice this rebirthing technique is you rid yourself of inner negativity at the molecular level. At the molecular level. That's why Kundalini Yoga is the science of energy. And you're also able to take mastery over your life. That's called sovereignty, right? You're able to shed any feelings of being a victim in your life. Just the way our brother Jesus Christ came to teach us how to not be a victim and how to live empowered, fulfilling life purpose. We're also able to create this synergy between our emotional and our spiritual wellness through the rebirthing process. And we can become way more finely attuned to all these emotions that we're experiencing. We can find a sense of clarity in our mind, which healing only happens at the level of the mind, at the level of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And then we can free our physical body from these past traumas and experiences, because remember, the body keeps score. So truly what rebirthing is, and when we practice these techniques, especially during a month like March, with the Spring Equinox, with the lunar eclipse, and with the coming soon of Jupiter and Uranus conjunction, what happens is that we become our true selves, cleansed version of ourselves. Just the way you take a shower to cleanse your body, there's an inner cleansing that has to happen. Otherwise, you're going to keep repeating the same cycles. You're like, why am I attracting the same toxic relationships? Why can't I get rid of this addiction? Why am I always depressed? Why can't I forgive and let go of my childhood trauma? You need to cleanse. We need to change your frequency. And that's what rebirthing holistic therapy is all about. So in this podcast episode, I'm not going to share specific techniques. However, I do offer a complimentary live healing session every week inside of my closed, private, complimentary Facebook group community, the Sovereign Woman Movement. So tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, I'll be sharing specific techniques. A lot of them will be around breath work that you can use during this time to help you rebirth, to help prepare not just for the spring equinox, for the lunar eclipse, but also for what's to come next month, so that you can unload the subconscious and stop repeating the same patterns that you're repeating. So you can find that link here below in the comments, in the description area, or you can find us on Facebook by going to facebook.com/groups/sovereign women with the plural, sovereign women, SOVEREIGN women. Now, I want to talk a little bit before we end and close for today about the pitfalls, because navigating this month and this potent energy, especially without guidance or especially without a structured practice like Kundalini Yoga, is going to be hard. It's going to be daunting. We are living in times of extremes, meaning either you're in high frequency vibration of happiness, hope, and faith, or you're not even in the middle. You are in complete fear, in complete destruction mode. There's like no middle anymore. Just the way they're trying to remove the middle class. Same thing with how we feel emotionally. So during this month, especially with the spring equinox and eclipse season, it is very easy to feel overwhelmed, to feel lost, because from every transit, astrological transit, there's the high frequency version of it, but then there's a low frequency version of it, because it's a polarity, right? So there's not everyone experiences these transits in the same way. Number one, because it's really based on your astrological chart. So basically, these transits create a grid onto Mother Earth and into our consciousness, and then you can get your free astrological chart online and then put it over the grid and see how that works, right? We'll talk about this more when we move into the actual podcast episodes throughout the week. But during this time, it's very, very easy to feel lost, to feel overwhelmed, to feel unsure on how to effectively use these energies, these forces for our own healing and for our own growth. It's very important for us to cultivate the mindset of openness, to be willing to integrate these deep healing techniques, which I'm going to be sharing with you throughout the month, which is going to give you the courage, which is going to give you the chi, the vitality to actually confront, to face and release the generational patterns that have shaped us for so long. So really, it's all about us embracing vulnerability, especially as it relates to our rebirthing. Because remember, rebirthing has to do with facing a lot of these things and emotions that perhaps you have not been able to face. And it also requires us to trust the process, to allow ourselves to heal, to allow ourselves to emerge. So many people are simply blocked because they are not allowing themselves to heal. They feel that they're unhealable. They feel that they just have to live like this in depression and anxiety and toxic relationship patterns and addiction. Those are all generational patterns that keep getting passed down until somebody, the cycle breaker, which is what Jupiter and Uranus conjunction is all about. I'm going to talk about that next week. You, as a cycle breaker, decides to be willing to do this inner work so that we can come out renewed on the other side. And not just for ourselves, because you heal yourself, you're now healing 7 generations before you and 7 generations after you. So as we conclude today's exploration of March's astrological significance, March 19th, spring equinox, March 25th, lunar eclipse in Libra, April 8th, solar eclipse, and then April 20th, Jupiter and Uranus conjunct, what is happening is we have an incredible opportunity for rebirthing, for generational healing, and I don't want you to miss out on it. I invite you to reflect on how you can start to actively engage with these energies. And of course, I invite you to join us in our private complimentary Facebook group community for the actual techniques, the Sovereign Women Movement, and to join us there for a private Q&A session where we're going to be able to not only share our thoughts and experiences, our questions, but we'll be able to also navigate this very transformative journey together. And of course, whatever comments, questions you have, post them down below here. We're building a community here on my podcast where it is safe to feel what you feel, to share what it is that's coming from your heart in order to disrupt all generational karmic patterns of emotional pain. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for hitting the like button. Thank you so much for sharing with all the other sovereign women in your life. I'll see you next week.